Right, today we are going to be looking at the theme of the supernatural in Macbeth and getting ready for our essays on it. So, as normal, I'm going to give you the 4 key points I would say in relation to the supernatural, and each of my points have been colour coded to match these different areas of the mark scheme. So, how does Shakespeare present the theme of the supernatural? In my introduction, I need to be making a couple of key points. So, through the supernatural, Shakespeare shows how indulging the supernatural will allow it to take a greater control over your life. If you give it a little bit of air, a little bit of oxygen, it will grow and it will become something you can't get rid of, something you come to rely on and depend upon. But the supernatural only desires chaos and destruction. It is never there to help you, it is never there to support you in whatever your quests might be, but it's there to hurt and to kill and destroy. So how does Shakespeare present the theme of supernatural? The 4 key points I would make are this. First of all, the supernatural chooses Macbeth as a vehicle for chaos, and I've got the quote thunder, lightning or rain for that. I would then talk about how the supernatural begins to take control of Macbeth mentally, for is this a dagger I see before me? I'd then go on to talk about how it consumes Macbeth, it takes a greater control over him, and it becomes to the point where it's impossible to decipher the difference between reality and the supernatural, and this is clear when he sees the ghost of Banquo and says, "Approach thou like the rugged Russian bear." Then finally I'll be looking at Lady Macbeth and how the supernatural destroys and humiliates us in our death, and I've got the quote out damn spot for that. So, paragraph 1, Act 1, Scene 1, we meet the witches and they say, "When shall we three meet again in thunder, lightning or rain?" So the witches declare that they will meet Macbeth, and they do. So this shows that in the supernatural they're the control of his fate and his destiny, and he wrongly puts his faith in them and he indulges their riddles. Now this is a fatal error because they do not want to help him. The thunder and lightning of this scene reflects the chaos and the danger the supernatural brings to society. They plan to use him to bring chaos and disorder. So this is a misguided choice that Macbeth has made. Now, a Jacobean audience would have associated the witches and the supernatural with the ultimate evil and firmly believe they can control the future. So this instantly establishes Macbeth as a victim of the supernatural and a victim of their power and their selfish desires for chaos. Now, I'd also look at the pathetic fallacy here. Weather is inescapable, which is reflective of how Macbeth could never escape the clutches of the supernatural. If it's raining, I'm going to get wet, I'm going to be in the rain, I can't escape it, the same way Macbeth can't escape the supernatural. And all weather options the witches give, thunder, lightning or rain, are all unpleasant. We don't want to be in any of them, which demonstrates how all of Macbeth's choices as a result of the supernatural will lead to pain and sufferance. Then I go on to paragraph 2. Now the supernatural then takes a different form here in terms of a hallucination, where Macbeth is on his way to kill King Duncan and he sees a dagger floating and he says, "Is this a dagger I see before me?" So the supernatural is taking increasing control over Macbeth mentally. He is now in his head, reflecting the supernatural's control of him. Now the supernatural takes the form of a dagger that guides him to Duncan, which is reflective of how the supernatural's control of him compromises the great chain of being and turns Macbeth from a patriotic hero to a reluctant villain. In doing so, he is punishing all of Scotland by taking away our hero, taking away someone we can respect and admire, and turning him into someone who is killing people and he is ruling through fear. Now the noun dagger here connotes secrecy and cowardice in murder, which reflects how Macbeth seeks to hide his commitment to the supernatural at this stage. This hallucination is done in private, no one can see him, he doesn't mention it to anybody else, and instead he wants to go and kill Duncan quickly so that he doesn't have to indulge this vision of the supernatural anymore. I'd look at the fact it's an interrogative here as a question. Now his question here shows that at this stage, this early stage in the play, he's got a lack of understanding and confidence in dealing with the supernatural. He's questioning it, he doesn't quite understand it. However, he does recognise there is no such thing. He knows there isn't a dagger there, yet he still proceeds with his murder. So therefore Shakespeare is questioning whether it's the supernatural that is the main drive for Macbeth, or is it actually his own ambition, and this supernatural is just a small component for his demise. So now go on to paragraph 3, and I'm going to look at this quote here from the Ghost of Banquo scene, when he sees the Ghost of Banquo and he says, "Approach thou like the rugged Russian bear." So at this point he's come to depend on the supernatural, for straight after this scene he returns back to the witches to ask for further advice and guidance. But as though he's come to depend on it, he also can't decipher the difference between reality and the supernatural, because unlike the dagger scene, he now can't tell that he's hallucinating. He doesn't recognise that he's become a pawn and a victim of the supernatural here, but truly believes the Ghost of Banquo is there and he's present. Now this is quite ironic that after the supernatural has taken complete control of him and driven him to a state of paranoia and fear, he's still returned to the witches for advice. So the supernatural has become addictive and he's become reliant upon it. Now I'd look particularly at the simile of the rugged Russian bear. It would take great bravery and masculinity to face a wild bear, so he resorts to traditional expectations of masculinity rather than wish to see the supernatural. This shows his fear of the supernatural, yet he still depends on it. I'd also look at bears being wild and dangerous, which reflects the beast the supernatural has created in Macbeth. And I'd also look at the adjective, the proper noun, Russian here, is distant and unreachable, reflecting how far Macbeth is from any peace and acceptance of the choices the supernatural has driven him to. Finally, paragraph 4, I'll be looking at Lady Macbeth. It's a very clear, obvious quote, I bet everyone knows it, but there's loads to say about it. We've got out damn spot. So the supernatural here is destroying Lady Macbeth. She had invited the supernatural into her life at the start, which said, "Come you spirits, unsex me here." So she had hugely underestimated the power of the supernatural and hugely underestimated its intentions and its ability to destroy her. Now with her death, Macbeth now also realises the futility of his own life, for he says, "Out, out, brief candle." So her death has destroyed him also, and therefore the supernatural has ruined the both of them in the marriage, and the demise is complete. Now I'd look at the non-language choices of this scene before I'd go any further. I'd look at the fact she's all on her own and dies without Macbeth by her side. So now Macbeth has faith in the supernatural rather than herself, showing the supernatural has destroyed their marriage almost as a microcosm for the rest of society. It's destroyed them two first, and then it's going to go on to destroy the rest of society through putting a tyrant as the king. I'd also look at the fact that she holds a candle. Candles symbolise hope and guidance to escape the darkness of the supernatural. She now needs that hope and that guidance, but it's so small and limited in this dark world that she has become a part of through indulging the supernatural. I'd also look at the fact that she says this doing a washing action with her hands, rubbing her hands together, which symbolises her desire to be pure and clean of the supernatural again. She doesn't want it in her life and wants to wash it away. Now, this symbolism of a spot is a supernatural hallucination. So the fact this supernatural hallucination is so permanent on that hand reflects how inescapable the supernatural is, but it's also quite a small image, reflecting the supernatural's small role in Macbeth's demise, along with many other factors. Now, both Macbeth and Lady Macbeth believed they could control the supernatural, and they put their faith in it in the prophecies that were given by the witches at the start, believing it was a guidance to them and a help to them. But Shakespeare shows how the supernatural cannot be tamed, it seeks chaos, and it will eventually destroy you and the society in which you exist.